Hey, welcome back to another episode of High Ticket Woman. Debbie Cottle here. I've got with me today Melissa Roll. Wait, Melissa, how do you say your last name?
Rolfs, like golfs.
Roll, Roll, Rolfs, like Rolf. Okay, everybody.
Rolf.
I did not know how to say Melissa's last name. So here we go. Melissa Rohlfs, and she is a certified holistic health and life coach. She helps women to find freedom from the struggle with food. Yes, I finally brought somebody on who can help us with the never ending struggle of dieting. I can't wait to dive into this with you, Melissa. Melissa is committed to empowering women to break free from dieting. Yes, thank you, emotional eating and self image issues so they can ditch the diet mentality and feel empowered in their own skin and be free to be who God made them to be. Thank you, Melissa. After her own tumultuous history with food, which included withholding and then later in life binging, she's now learned how to deal with the core issues around her own broken relationship with food. And as a result, she has felt called to go to school and learn how to teach other women how to do the same. She graduated from the Health Coach Institute as a holistic health and life coach in 2018, and she is the proud owner of Free to Be Coaching. She is a proud Purdue alumni living in Arizona with her husband, Chad, and her two kiddos. Melissa, welcome to the High Ticket Woman.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm excited to be here with you.
Okay, so we have to start with your story because I mean, what woman doesn't have a story around food? I got my own story for sure. Can you tell us a little bit about just tell us how you got started in this, with your own struggles?
Yeah, and I love that because we do all have a story with food, whether we
You
realize it
do.
or. And so thank you for acknowledging that because we do. And I think, for me, it started in childhood. I had a lot of trauma. And so I used food to kind of cope and handle things and didn't know that's what I was doing, but I think it was legal. It was socially acceptable. It was in the house. So some people turned to drugs or alcohol, and I went to food. So that carried throughout life. And then finally, I did get diagnosed with PTSD from childhood trauma after I was married and had children and really I wanted to change the trajectory for my family. And so, with that diagnosis, it involved meeting with a naturopath and learning about the impact of food on mood and overall health. And that really changed everything for me. So, as a result, I found freedom from living off of sugar and really learning how to process emotions and feelings and working through that and went to school to become a health coach. And that's the really high powered overview.
Yeah, that's the short condensed version. But, really what you're saying is that you were emotionally eating, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Which so many of us as women, we do this. And of course, part of what makes this really challenging is that it becomes habitual. I do a lot of work with clients around how habits develop. And, I always talk about myself in this, in that, I struggled for a while for lots of different reasons with snacking at night. And even after I became aware of what was actually going on, like understanding the habit loop and, what triggers that and the routine and the mechanism behind a habit, I still be in front of the pantry door battling with this in my own head. Like, Debbie, you don't need to eat. Yes, I do. You just had dinner. You're not hungry. But this is what we always do. You've worked hard today and you're ready to relax and you need food when you go watch TV or go even in the bathtub. I have my little snack on and my little glass of wine. Like, that's what I did. And there'd be this battle in my brain, like, you don't need this. Yes, you do. And of course, I wasn't reaching for the carrot sticks and the broccoli. So, I mean, you see this a lot with women. There's this pattern, right?
Absolutely, and I think it's tricky because we do need food to survive. It's not something that we can just say, "Oh, I'm not gonna do that anymore because it's not good for me." Like, we need food to survive, and I think that's what makes it even more complicated because like you said, we're not reaching for the carrots or the broccoli. It's more like
No.
the ice cream or the chips or the fries or the pizza or whatever that may be.
Absolutely. The yummy stuff. Well, I think until we learn how to really enjoy broccoli and carrots, to use those as an example, because I mean, I love broccoli now. I love carrots now, but there's a whole mechanism that has to change up here in the brain. Now I look at all that other stuff and go, ugh, that stuff's gross and disgusting for me. And my body hates that. But I wasn't thinking those things back then.
Yeah. Neither was I.
Yeah. So this wasn't, I mean, this was a journey for you, and I think it's really important for women to hear about that journey. Like, you didn't just wake up one day and go, "Oh, I'm an emotional eater and this is a real problem." How did you get on the path of self-discovery and then getting whole?
I don't think I knew that I was an emotional eater, Debbie, until I went through my health coach certification and there was like a
Mm,
name to it. And I'm like, oh, that's what it is. Like for me, food had always been like, oh, I don't feel good about something or I'm upset, so I'm going to eat. Or then it was, oh, I need to lose weight, so I'm going to withhold and I'm going to deprive and I'm going to, over exercise and do all of these things in an attempt to lose weight. Like it was never I wasn't able to connect the behavior and what was happening inside with my relationship with food, and so I don't think it was until I went to school that I was like, "Oh, that's me. That's exactly what I'm doing." Because I had done every diet, I had done everything, and nothing ever worked.
I hate diets. I
I'm
don't
with you.
believe in diets.
Well, you notice how they say
I
diet, but the first 3 letters of diet are DIE.
die. I never thought about that, but you're right. Interesting. Yeah, so why are we so attracted to to these temporary fads of, like, quick weight loss that really don't work?
I think it's because we've been given the false hope in the advertising that they are selling us. Like we see, that I could name off all of the fads that have been happening for years for women to try to lose weight.
Right.
And that's what it is it's a fad and all this money invested in the marketing and everybody on socials doing it. And oh, I see the commercials and there's like this glimmer of hope that we have that, oh my goodness, if it works for them, it might work for me too.
Yeah. The crazy thing is so much of this is tied into body image and our distorted ideas of what our body looks like, and I know you've experienced this, because I think every woman has experienced this. You think you're fat, and you go back, and then years go by, and then you look back on pictures of yourself at the time that you thought you were fat, and you go, "Why did I think that? I was beautiful. My body was great. Now I feel fat compared to the way I used to look." Why do we struggle so much with this distorted idea? And then in hindsight, we go back and go, "Oh, I wasn't fat at all."
I think part of that is again the messaging that we're given. I mean, look at the way women have evolved over time with culture. Look at Marilyn Monroe, like in today's
Yeah,
standards, right? Like she
yeah,
would not probably be on the cover of the magazine, but
yeah.
how many years ago that was what every woman should look like. And they were,
She really curvy, yeah.
yes, and
Yeah,
now
you're right.
they're expecting us to be waifs.
It's true how much the trends, the fads that are going on in terms of fashion, the idealistic body type, which, nobody has, not, you know, with the advent of airbrushing,
Yep.
there is no such thing. Even AI,
Mhm.
you're being marketed to now by influencers that don't even actually exist. It's just all fake. It's an impossible image, an impossible standard that women feel like they have to live up to. And I'll tell you one thing, we're maybe digressing a little bit here in this, but I'm 55 and I'm bombarded with images of women my age who are caught up in the whole industry of, you know, ch- chasing after youth. And it's very difficult now to find women who really just want to let themselves grow old gracefully. So there's fillers and Botox and, surgery and, endless ways for us to continue to look young. And, it's just this impossible standard that I get, again, it feeds into um, dieting and eating, etc. So what's one of the biggest things that you see with women that you work
Sorry, I'm just taking a note because something came up. I think the root of all that, Debbie, is insecurity, right? Like,
with? Yeah.
we feel like we're not enough. We're not thin enough. We're not young enough. And so it's all of this like marketing is preying on like our insecurities and our lack of self worth and believing that we're enough. Because if we believe that we're enough, we know that we matter, that we're worth taking care of. And we know because, history has told us we are going to get older. Aging is a fact of life. So why are we trying to fight something that we know is going to happen?
Right. And yet we do.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I think it does there is that core insecurity inside of us. And I think part of the battle too is, our relationship with God versus what society tells us because they often contradict each other. God says, "I created you in my image and I look at the heart. I don't look at the outward appearance. I don't need you to look a certain way, Debbie. I don't need you to be a certain weight. I don't need you to have your hair or makeup a certain way." But society says otherwise. Society says you don't have any value unless you fit into this idealized image. So we struggle.
We do.
Who's right? Yeah, because
And I
we're bombarded with the messaging.
Yes, and I think that's why you've gotta know your word and what the word says about you because that's the ultimate truth, like, social's gonna come and go, the messaging is gonna change, but God's word never changes.
Yeah. You just said something that I want to dive into. Social media uh, has the power for such good. And yet I find that it is one of the biggest culprits for creating this false idea of who we should be. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I work with teen girls, and I think what's really interesting is that, like, I'm raising a teenage daughter right now, and we're the first generation of parents who are dealing with social, like, this is uncharted territory for all of us, and so it's been interesting to see, like, how girls are managing it. And I can say for my daughter, I think she does a really good job. She will get like inspiration. There'll be some faith based things. Like she, I think, does a good job. Whereas I have seen some of her peers, maybe that has caused them to struggle more or trip them up more. And so I think social media, like you said, can be used for good. And there's so much good that can come from it. But I think it also has the ability to take us the other way.
So, that's interesting because we as women, we model to our children for good or bad, right? And I've had many female clients who learned about their body image and the distortions that they have going along with that from their mothers and sometimes their fathers. My own youngest sister struggled with this. I didn't find this out till I was an adult that my parents, especially my dad, had my sister stepping on a scale on a regular basis because she's much shorter than me and built a little differently. And so my dad, who's more weight obsessed, interestingly, um, didn't want her to put on too much weight. So that completely affected the way she views her body now. He didn't do that to me. I'm taller and I'm built differently. I'm a little bit leaner in that way, but um, you know, how, how heartbreaking for me to find out that my sister as a young girl was being subjected to this idea that she couldn't just be the way she was, that, somehow her worth was attached to her weight.
Devastating. And I think there is a lot to be said about that modeling. I mean, if you are a mom and you look in the mirror and you sigh or you complain or like you step on the scale and it dictates your whole day, like your kids are picking up on that. And you don't have to tell them what's wrong. You don't have to tell them that the
Yeah.
scale doesn't say what you want it to say. Like they're very intuitive and they know. Just like I knew as a young girl, like going to my grandparents' house. Oh, we go to my grandparents' house and we get into the cookie drawer. That's what we do. So then it created this
Yeah.
habit and this pattern of, oh, every time I go to my grandparents' house, I go to the cookie jar. So when I think of my grandparents, what do I think of? Going to the cookie jar. Like it's that
And
foundation.
there's an there's an emotional connection that
Yeah.
has it too, so it becomes embedded. as part of it's at a cellular level, it's embedded in our memory. Yeah. So what would you tell women about even just the parenting side of this, like what you're modeling to your daughter and how we need to be so careful as women about what we pass on generationally.
'Cause that's huge. I mean, I would just encourage the moms, like, just stop and think about your relationship with food and your body and what you view about yourself and kinda where those beliefs come from. And I guarantee you there will be memories attached to something that happened in your childhood, whether it was a parent that said something, a sibling, a classmate, like, all of that impacts our belief, and we operate from our beliefs. And so I think it's super important to figure out, okay, where am I at with this? And what am I subconsciously passing on to my kids, whether I want to or not? Because that's what we do. More is caught than taught.
Absolutely. So where do you start with women? Like when you coach women, what's the first point? Where do you begin?
We start with their goals and why they want to do it. Like, what do you want to see at the end of this process? What would make you realize, oh my goodness, this was the best thing I've ever done for myself? And let's figure out a plan to get you from where you are to where you want to be that's realistic, that works with your life because we're all different. It's not one size fits all. I can't sit here and say, oh, Debbie, I did this and I had so much energy. You need to do it too, because that might not even energize you. It might not even be feasible for the stage of life that you're in. It's a disservice to do that to people. So it's really customizing where are you at? What do you want from this? And how can we get you there?
So determining your why, like what's your reason behind this? Motivation is key. What's interesting about motivation though is it has to be a motivation that sustains you. So when I think about weight, so much of the time, often for us as women, our motivation is I want to lose that 10 pounds so I can get into an outfit. Or I've got an event that,
Yep.
I'm going to and I want to whatever it is. Like I've got a cruise coming up here in 2 months, literally. And I'm already thinking about, oh, I want to lose a little weight so that I can fit into this certain outfit. But the problem, of course, with that being my motivator is that if I don't have something beyond that event, what sustains all those good habits that allowed me to lose that weight in the first place? Little by little by little, those old habits are gonna creep back into my life, and before I know it, I've gained that whatever 5, 10, 15 pounds back, and this is a pattern that we struggle with over and over. So do you I guess you start with women where they're at, like, maybe that is their initial goal, but do you transition them to, like, some sort of motivation that sustains them like a lifestyle goal?
100%. And sometimes I have to dig a little deeper to find out what that is because a lot
Yeah.
of times it is very surfacey. Oh, I've got this event coming up. I want to look good for my reunion. Okay, that's amazing. We want you to look good for your reunion, but let's dig a little bit deeper. What will having that do for you? What is really behind that? What is that really about? What you really like? What is the big goal here? Because a lot of times I don't think we know what the big goal is. We just know that we feel something is off. We have something coming up. We want to look different. We want to show up different. And so we'll focus on that. But we've got to figure out that deep, powerful why and then figure out how we can set ourselves up for success to reach that and to keep going after the event has happened or after we've reached our goal or whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I think we have to really connect again with the emotion behind all of this because there's so much shame and blame that we beat ourselves up with, or sometimes other people beat us up with it too. Um, because we can have a parent, like with my sister, or we can even have a spouse, or we can have friends who inadvertently or even sometimes intentionally use this against us. In my previous marriage, every time I would tell my ex-husband that I was on a diet, he thought he was being helpful when he'd say, "I thought you weren't supposed to eat that." That's not on your diet, right? And of course, that was not motivating for me at all, right? That was very shaming. Because often when we're on a diet, we're struggling to adhere to the strict nature. One time I was on a diet that was like, I don't know what they actually call this, but it was like maple syrup and freshly squeezed lemon juice and water. I don't know. This just I can't remember if there was just the 2 ingredients, and you had to drink that for, like, 10 days with no other food, and, of course, I actually did it. I managed. I the hardest part about that and cayenne pepper, like the high grade cayenne pepper, right? So whatever that diet is called, of course, then you go into ketosis, so you're losing muscle mass. Ultimately, it's your body's feeding on itself, right? So the most difficult part of that quote unquote diet was the boredom because I love food. I'm a total foodie. Yeah, I love the way food tastes and the texture and the smell and the variety. I love to eat. I'm like drinking this. It didn't taste bad, but drinking that day in and day out and not being able to eat any other food was just so boring. I lost weight though. I mean, I did. I dropped it like a hot potato. It just came right off. But bad analogy, but I can't think of another one. But I mean, and the weight didn't come back on right away, but it did come back on. So
And you were miserable in the process. I mean, that's
yeah, it was miserable.
about food is that it's a very sensory experience. Like you said, we've got the taste and the texture and the feel and the smells and like the company of who we're eating with. Like it's a very sensory oriented
Yeah,
experience.
it really is. And God created food to be enjoyed in that way. And we've totally sort of diets ruin the whole experience. Anyway, back to what I was saying earlier about sometimes people can really sabotage this for us, right? So, um, how do you help women deal with the external factors when it comes to getting healthy with food?
Yeah, we there I have a whole session that we talk exactly about that, the sabotage, right? Like what is the sabotage
Yeah.
for you and how does it come in and how can we create a different framework and a different pattern so that when you are going to the grocery store to buy healthy foods to make your meals for the week and your kid needs something, like how can we not use that as like a, oh my gosh, I can't do this, but how can we figure out another way? Like I think Marie Forleo says everything is figure outable. And it's kind of helping learn how do we figure things out when they don't go as planned? Because that's what happens with food, right? Like, I had a terrible day at work, it didn't go as planned. I'm gonna eat this to make myself feel better, and then we do the shame and the guilt, and we need to just stop and pause and figure out a new plan.
It's this vicious cycle until we decide to, change it up and go in a different direction. This whole podcast is about being high ticket, i.e., high value. And it's inextricably linked with the way we as women view ourselves. And that is inextricably linked with our outer appearance. We don't place a lot of value on inner beauty. Is that something that you touch on in your coaching with women? I imagine it
We
is.
Yeah, we do because I feel like there again, a whole nother session that we dive into this. It's like, where do those beliefs about yourself and your body come from? And what really is true here? Because you've just been believing a lie that somebody spoke over you as a child because they were angry or they were upset or they were having your own struggle. And so let's focus on who you are and who God made you to be and what he says about you and live from that place instead of that hurtful wound or that rejection or abandonment or whatever that is that comes up for you because a lot of times we don't stop and think about why we believe what we believe or why we do what we do. We're just so busy going through the motions that really to pause and to give that space is really powerful. And that's where we change.
What does a healthy relationship with food actually tangibly look like?
Yeah, I think it looks like knowing your body and knowing like these are the foods that really give me energy. These are foods that make me feel good. And I'm going to eat them because I want to feel good and I want to have energy and I want to be vibrant. Or, maybe it looks like I had a bad day and I know that this makes me not feel good and I'm going to make that choice. I think it's being mindful. I think it's being aware. I think it's knowing why you're turning to food because, again, a lot of times we will turn to food to make us feel better and it doesn't do that. It might in the moment. And then after we've indulged or we've done whatever, we might feel worse about ourselves. And that might drive us to eat more because food is how we feel better. And so, how do we break that cycle? I think we need to figure out what we're craving, what our needs are. We need to be able to articulate that. We need a space to process our emotions. I think it's not using food for any of that, but really using food to nourish ourselves and to help us live the lives that God called us to live. Because if you're sick and tired, you can't live up to calling.
So there's this for sure there's this temporary pleasure that comes with food, and, I mean, there are actually, endorphins that are released, certain brain chemicals that are released with certain foods for sure. So there 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 are there is a brain chemistry link to food, but ultimately it is a temporary experience that isn't going to satisfy us on a permanent basis, so we're going to keep going back to those foods to try to recreate that experience when our relationship with God and our relationship with ourselves is what's actually sustainable and is gonna help us truly know our value and truly know our worth, and I think, that is a lifelong journey to get there for sure.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
Especially we're bombarded, like everything we've talked about here.
constantly, yeah.
The world is just constantly knocking at our door.
Yeah. The other thing too that I've started to become aware of is that our body does change as we get older, and, right now, I'm sort of discovering that foods that I could eat in the past I I can't eat them now. I got diagnosed with acid reflux about 3 years ago. I didn't have any symptoms, except that I started to lose my voice. Turns out the reflux was, spilling over and burning my vocal cords. I'm a singer, it took away I mean, I couldn't sing. I'd go to vocalize and there was nothing there, and, I was working with clients all day long, and I just had very little volume to my actual speaking voice. I had to go to a voice coach. So ultimately, I had to change my diet. I had to drop coffee, no more caffeine, and I had to limit other certain things. But one of the biggest changes that came for me was I had to go to bed with an empty stomach. So I had to even change up when I ate. So now I typically don't eat any kind of dinner, which has actually been a good thing for me. But I still struggle gastrointestinally with my body doesn't like the combinations of food that I'm eating, and I don't know where to start and how to figure that out. So is that something when you work with women, do you where would you send somebody like me to figure out do I need to find out if I'm I have a food addiction to certain things like dairy? And I've definitely cut out gluten already. I know that one is affecting me. Where does somebody like me start?
I think a great starting point is to keep a food journal and just kind of document what you're
Mhm,
eating and how it makes you
mhm.
feel. Because again, I think we get so busy and we get so caught up in things that we don't
Yeah.
stop and connect the dots. And I like the
Mhm.
journal because it does that. It can show you, okay, so I know that for 3 days in a row, I have this food and this food and this food. And I notice that I have the same reaction. And it can kind of indicate to you that that food could be the culprit. So I think journaling is a great place to start and kind of building that awareness because like you said, our body
Mhm.
you're your own best health expert, but we need to pause and kind of listen to what our bodies are telling us.
That is so true because I often it's the after effect of oh, I feel bloated or oh, I feel heavy. And ultimately, I think what's going on is some sort of inflammation, which is at the heart of all diseases. But, I've always had this belief about myself that I eat healthy, that I'm a healthy person, that, even though I've been on the diets and whatnot, I've never really had huge weight issues my whole life. It's fluctuated 5, 10, 15 pounds, but, I've never thought of myself as being someone who struggled a lot with my weight. But now here I am with these sort of digestive issues going, this is a new problem for me and I've got to figure this out. So yeah, the food journal is of course the place to start, like just knowing what I'm eating. What I when you work with women and you help them with this, I imagine the first place you have to start is, of course, their I mean, you said goals, but mindset is so key to this, right? The mindset shift that has to happen, yeah.
Yeah. Mindset and habits, and those two are so connected.
They are, they are. Is there I've worked with absolutely drop dead gorgeous women who had such a distorted body image. It's amazing to me. I don't know a single woman who is completely happy with her body.
And how
It's just
sad
so
is that,
sad.
right?
Yes. It's so sad.
Especially as Christian women, like, we know that we are made in God's image. Our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, like, it's so clear.
Yeah.
Yet we, you know, fall prey to that lie that that's not true.
And well, I love what you just said. It is a lie. We've all bought into a lie that we aren't good enough the way God created us. So we're too tall, we're too short, we're too round, we're too pear-shaped, we're too this, we're too flat-chested, we're too big-chested, we're whatever it is, we it's a lie. And again, we as a society, we put so much emphasis on the outside that the inside of us really gets neglected. Yeah. This is a powerful thing. So for you, I mean, again, this was a journey. At what point, what was your aha moment where you began to just go, "Ah, I get it."
I feel like there were a couple, one of them being when our kids were younger and there were Girl Scout cookie time, and I was talking to some ladies at the gym. I went to the gym so I could have a break from my children, that's where I was at. I put them in childcare and I would go have coffee. And I had told the ladies at the gym, I'm like, "Oh, was eating my Girl Scout cookies in the pantry by myself." And one of the women was like, "Why were you doing that by yourself?" And I'm like, "Well, because I didn't wanna share." And she was kinda curious about that, and I'm like, "Nobody's ever asked me that before." So I feel like that kind of planted a seed. And then later, I took our son to the chiropractor because he was fussy, and I had been nursing, and she said, "What did you eat?" And I said, "Well, I had some Oreos," and she asked how many, and I said, "I think I ate, like, half the package," and she said, "I know you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're tired, but this is not helping you or your child." And so I feel like those were maybe some starting points, and then I think the diagnosis of PTSD and going to the naturopath really kind of blew my eyes open to, like, okay, this is really food is about more than weight. It's not about, like, just weight, because that was my only association was food is associated with weight. If I wanna lose weight, I don't eat. If I wanna gain weight, I eat. And so I think to really realize everything that food does for us is really that was probably my big aha, and not wanting to give my kids the legacy that I had with food.
I'm watching a documentary right now that's really fascinating. It's called "You Are What You Eat." And, they're doing a twin study. They've got 4, sets of twins, and they have randomly assigned one twin to be on a keto diet, or a completely vegan diet, sorry, not keto, and the other one to be on omnivorous diet. And, for the first 4 weeks, they send them their actual food, it's mailed to them. And then on the second 4 weeks, they have to do their own shopping. And they're looking at it very holistically. It's a whole panel of scientists that are and then they have a fitness component to this, and they've gone through all these assessments, and it's really quite fascinating. But what I the most thing I think the biggest takeaway for me in watching this documentary is what you just said. We tend to just think about food in terms of, like, what makes us feel good and what we enjoy eating. We really don't understand fully what fuels our body in healthy ways, what fuels our mind in healthy ways, and proportion size and the quality of foods that we put in our body, and organic versus not, non-organic. And it's just like there's so much to that. And I think it can be really overwhelming. You go to the grocery store and so much of our food is non-food. I sometimes I look I live in Mexico now, so it's less of an issue here, although not really. There's a lot of non-food here too, but especially when I go back to the US and I'm at the grocery store and I look over sort of like surreptitiously to people's carts and I think, "Oh, wow." And the carts are just laden with processed, trans fat, easy, quick remedies to "I'm hungry." And the damage our bodies are literally starving for nutrition.
It's incredibly discouraging.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I mean, I mean, this must be really empowering for you, though, to work with women to help begin to educate them. What's it like for women going through this journey with you when when they have their own aha moment of understanding what God actually intended food to be for us?
It's amazing. I mean, they're like, "Oh my gosh," and they, like, go out and they change the world, like, 'cause what it happens is it doesn't just affect them, it affects their families. They don't want their
Yeah.
kids to eat what they've been giving them. They don't want their husband to eat that
Yeah.
way. They want their friends, and so it creates this beautiful ripple effect, but it's extremely countercultural.
It is easy, and they probably get resistance from their spouse and their kids because 'cause they're all used to eating those yummy, foods that are really food, you know? So that's part of, I'm sure, the journey that they go through with you is how to then bring the family on board to this new way of experiencing food and the benefits to the whole family for it.
Yeah, because you gotta get their buy-in.
Yeah. I learned about, what is it called? I'm trying to think of the term. It's something like the sweet spot, but it's something else. I'm not thinking of the term right now, but it's that engineered spot that scientists have gotten for foods that are not good for us, that perfect sweet, salty place that where our brain normally has a trigger point, that shuts off and says, "You're full, Debbie. You don't need any more of this." But they've engineered food to get rid of that, so that the craving we're just like, for me, it's like Doritos. I
Mm.
tell my husband, "Do not buy Doritos. Do not bring them home. I don't want them in the house." Because I will go through an entire bag of those things, and I know they're bad for me, but they're delicious.
And it's kind of set up to work against you.
Yeah, not kind of. It totally is. Like, there are people out there intentionally trying to get us fat and addicted
Right, and sick.
and sick. Yeah, and sick. How do women work with you, Melissa? Let's I mean, we could talk about this all day long, but ultimately what they really need is to know how to get a hold of you. Now, I know you've got a free guide out there. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Feel Good Without Food, and every woman on the planet needs this guide. So how do they find
Yes, I will send it along to you, and you can put it in the show notes, but you can also reach me at my website, which is free, the number 2, the letter B, coaching.com. There's resources on there. There's all sorts of good things, blogs, like lots of education, because I really want people to
Awesome.
be aware. I don't want it to be like, oh, I need to do this because she says so.
Yeah.
Like, understand the why behind the why it matters, why it's important.
Yeah, why it's absolutely essential to get on this new healthier path. Okay, freetobecoaching.com. We'll put the link to that in the episode description. One last if you were to give women one piece of takeaway advice, if they hear nothing else today other than this one thing, what would that be, Melissa?
I want them to know they don't have to stay stuck. So many times we believe the lie that this is how it's always been. This is what I came from. This has been something that my whole family has dealt with. This is just my destiny. That is not true. You do not have to stay in that place. You do not have to stay stuck.
Ah, that like if we could just change the world in that one way, things would be so much different. We really define who we are by our past experiences, and it's sad. So you're absolutely right. That I think that's an absolute critical place to start. Lisa, thank you so much for being here on the High Ticket Woman today. I've loved chatting with you, and I know that my listeners have definitely gotten a ton of value out of this today. And I hope they really do reach out to you and definitely go grab your free guide. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Debbie. I appreciate it.
All right, ladies, that's it for today. If you definitely go grab Melissa's free guide. And if you don't have mine already, the 10-step relationship rescue roadmap, you can go to my website, debbiecaudle.com. And also don't forget to join my private Facebook group, Relationship Resolution, because that's where I go live every 2 weeks to answer all your relationship questions and also the source for all kinds of other free relationship tips and tools. So that's it for today, ladies. I'll see you on next week's episode.